I see some kind of icon
Yep,
linking.
I think you're streaming, so
Okay.
now you can go for it. Yeah.
Okay, looks like we're ready to go. Let me do some last minute adjustments here. Turn my light on, make sure the camera's working. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Lance Luke and Martin Pea. We're continuing our webinar series, Ask Building Expert webinar series. We have a hot topic today: fire sprinklers, who needs it? And welcome everybody who are on our Zoom platform, as well as we're restreaming or streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So we have a pretty diverse audience through various social media platforms. And I want to personally reach out and thank you guys for tuning in. I know everybody has busy schedules. Um, the other thing to know is we're recording. Once I hit the record button, gee, I almost forgot to record. So we're actually recording. So if you have to drop out and want to tune in later, we're going to have the actual recording of this entire webinar on our website, along with probably over 100 other webinars we've given in the past on building and construction topics, including real estate and some other interesting topics. So the topic I'm going to talk about today is fire sprinklers, which applies not only in Hawaii, where our office is based in, and not only in the United States, all over the world. So some of the things that I'm going to be discussing, or most of them, are applicable to any type of building in the whole world. And recently, my wife and I went on a trip in May, and we went to London, France, Portugal, Spain, Morocco, and back up to Spain. And every building supposed to have fire sprinklers, but the older ones don't. But so it applies. So if you think it doesn't have anything to do with your building, if you're, tuning in from Italy or wherever, it does. Now, the single family houses may not be applicable because in certain areas, the building code doesn't require fire sprinklers in a residential house. For instance, in Hawaii, there's no building code that requires that, as opposed to on the mainland, if you build a new house, you're required to put fire sprinklers. So it's kind of in a uh, location or area requirement in your local jurisdictions. But uh, let's let's go right into it. A few things I want to talk about. National Building Expert asks the building expert. This is what we're doing here, or providing information to help the building owners, homeowners, property managers, construction and real estate attorneys, contractors, real estate developers, anybody who's interested in the topic. The webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection LLC, which is a company located in Honolulu, Hawaii. We do building inspections and construction management for any type of property. And that's the only 5-second commercial I'm going to make here. So fire sprinklers, who needs it? Do you need it? Does your building need it? How do we get involved in all this? And um, with respect to Honolulu, Hawaii, where our main office is based in, this whole fire sprinkler thing came about because we had a major fire. It was the biggest high-rise fire in a condo and in a building called Marco Polo, which is a pretty big, massive building. The fire started in 2017, and I was on site that day, the next day, week later, and all that because I was not only called by the news and I gave like 5 different interviews on the news, but I was interested in what happened and trying to find out how could we prevent this in the future. So um, the assistant fire chief after the fire had reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're one of the people that I think would be good to sit on the committee." So it was this fire sprinkler action committee. There was a subcommittee called the Building Code Committee, and I sat on that committee, and we had to attend meetings twice a month or whenever we got called. And the reason why I was interested and I wanted to serve is because I wanted to make the buildings in Hawaii or in Honolulu safer. But what happened was we came up with this nice plan and it got shot down and it got watered down by the city council. There was a lot of flack from building owners saying we can't afford to install fire sprinklers. So the law that got passed to require high-rise buildings to install fire sprinklers got watered down and the can got kicked down the road. So that's what's happening currently. Okay, so it's still a requirement for high-rise buildings, but it's not mandatory to install like next year kind of thing. And when I say high-rise buildings, the definition of high-rise buildings, according to the Honolulu Code, is 75 feet. If your building is 75 feet or higher, which is basically a 7 to 8 story building, then you're required to install fire sprinklers. Okay, so that's basically what the deal is. So before I decided that before I actually go into the formal PowerPoint, I want to give a recap in the beginning. I usually give a recap at the end if there's time, but I'm going to do it at the beginning because some people had sent me a text or Facebook message saying, "I'm going to join your webinar, but I can't stay the whole thing." Okay, so those of you, you know who you are. Sharon, you're one of them. I'm going to give a recap. Okay, but then I also want you guys to watch the video replay later on. It's free. Okay, we're not charging anything. You don't need no Netflix account, Prime Time, or whatever they call it. Okay, and Martin and I are actually working with some popcorn manufacturers to kind of make our own brand of popcorn. So don't ask for any now. We're not there yet, but I mean, somebody even said, throw in some Kakimochi, Mochi Crunch, Arari, and we'll make a hurricane popcorn. But maybe we'll do that for a hurricane webinar we give. Okay, so when it comes to fire safety, fire sprinklers actually play a pivotal role in preventing huge catastrophe type disasters, such as a major fire. Older buildings in particular are higher risk. Why? Because they're not maybe designed that well to today's standards for fire escape and so forth. Aging infrastructure, outdated safety requirements or outdated safety components such as your fire alarm system. Okay, if it's not upgraded, or your electrical system, or your building's so old it doesn't even have a fire sprinkler system. Okay, or it's so old and in an area that's old neighborhood doesn't even have a fire hydrant, within close proximity to the building, or your neighborhood for that matter. What about your fire extinguishers or your fire hoses? The building's so old it doesn't even have those components. So the goal of the fire sprinkler is to save lives and practice safety. Now, I even interviewed a couple firefighters, and I said, I got a question for you. Why, if your firehouse is located right next to the condo building, right next to the condo building, why does a building have to have fire sprinklers? If you guys are like next door, you can just, arrive in a minute. And they said the fire sprinkler, if the building had a fire sprinkler and there was a fire on the 20th floor, the sprinkler would go off immediately, right? We can't even get to that unit in time, right? Even if we live next door, or our office is next door, firehouse is next door. Why? Because we would have to gather all our equipment, put on our hats, and actually drive the truck out of the station, park it right next door. We have to get out. We have to look at the fire enunciator system with the blinking light to see what floor it's on, right? We cannot use the elevator, so we have to walk up 20 floors with 50 pounds of equipment on our backs. By the time we get there, it's minutes later. It's not like right away. So he says, in any case, and no matter what the scenario is, the fire sprinkler is there faster than the fire department. Okay, so that's what I was told. Older buildings are at risk, like I mentioned before. Pros and cons of installing a fire sprinkler system. Well, the pros are, the benefits are, okay, you're going to prevent lives. You're going to prevent people from getting burned or dying, or a lot of, believe it or not, when there's fires, a lot of people that die, they don't die from being burned. They die from smoke inhalation, okay, because it affects your lungs. You have protected property. You have lower insurance premiums if you have a fire sprinkler system. Quick response, like I mentioned, your fire sprinkler is 24/7, right? The fire department, although they're on call 24/7, it's not like they're at your building 24/7. Okay, the other thing, and a lot of people don't realize this, fire sprinklers actually protect not only the people in the building, but the firefighters. Okay, if you have a sprinkler in your building, it's less risky for the firefighter to actually go to your building and try to put the fire out. You heard of stories where the firefighters got injured fighting a fire. Some have even died, especially in the wildfires. So that's the benefits. Now, the cons, right, are the installation costs. It's too expensive. The maintenance costs, we have to maintain it. What if there's an accidental water damage, right? The sprinkler head goes off accidentally, somebody hits it or whatever. It could cause a flood, right? And then the other thing is aesthetics after the fact, right? Your building looks nice. Now, when you have fire sprinklers, now you got all these piping, exposed pipes all over your walls, your ceilings, and it just doesn't look good. Okay, so that's basically, the pros and cons. Now, there was one building that I inspected, and there was a lot of Japanese students. Okay, it was not in Japan; it was here. Believe it or not, a lot of Japanese students come to Hawaii to attend the university, or they have specific Japanese universities. And So they lived in a condo. It wasn't a dorm. And, you know, the fire sprinkler head, they had their clothes hangers and clothes hanging. They're using that as like a closet or something. And I'm like, I don't think you should be doing that. And then I even heard one case of the fire sprinkler head going off, spraying water because uh, somebody hung clothes on the sprinkler head and the weight had forced the sprinkler head to develop a crack or something. Okay, so basically, that's what my talk's going to be about. So older buildings are at risk, pros and cons. Okay, let's go through it in more detail. The benefits of fire sprinklers. You probably know this, common sense, but life-saving, property protection, lower insurance premiums, rapid response, okay, and reduce environmental impact. Is it worth the cost? Well, you're going to have to decide. I'm thinking that what is somebody's life worth? Okay, when you talk about the cost, because as I'm going through this whole process after the Marco Polo fire, people were telling me it costs too much. You know, do you know that it's going to cost $5 million to put fire sprinklers in our building? And I said, well, let me ask you this: how much is one human life worth? Is it worth 5 million? Is it worth less than that? Is it worth more than that? What if the life was your life or somebody you loved, right? You can't put a dollar value on somebody's life, right? So after I mentioned that, they don't know what to say, right? So anyway, um, the cons of installing fire sprinklers. Installation costs is very expensive. Maintenance expenses, like I mentioned, false alarms. You have a head that goes off and now the whole unit's flooded or it floods 20 units, right? Aesthetic impact, it doesn't look too good. You already have a smoke detector in your ceiling, and now you have all these fire sprinkler heads. It's like, holy mackerel. Um, my unit doesn't look too good now. But I tell people, I'd rather have it not look so good, but then it's going to work in the event of a fire, right? And then if you have water damage problems because of a leaky pipe or whatever, that's, not good. But that goes with anything. When somebody says, oh, if I install fire sprinklers, there might be a leak. I said, okay, but guess what? You already have pipes in your building. You have water supply pipes. When you turn your faucet on, water comes out. Those pipes can leak anytime in a high-rise building or in any kind of building. You have a drain pipe. You flush your toilet. Where does the water go, right? If there's a crack in it due to an old pipe or some kind of defect, you got water damage too. So there's going to be a flood from pipes that are already in your building, even if you don't have a fire sprinkler piping set up. Okay, so I agree that could be a problem, but it's not like you're going to eliminate floods in your building. Okay. Now, you need a fire protection engineer if you're going to install a fire sprinkler system. Why? Because that engineer has to design the plans for not only the sprinkler system, but the sprinkler system is connected to your fire alarm system, which is connected to your elevator. It's all interconnected. At least the more modern ones are, right? So anything detected, it's all talking, the components are basically talking to themselves, and it's easier to see where's the location of the fire and what's happening, and the firefighters would know where to go to put it out. Right? Now, let's say you guys want to talk about possibility of installing a fire sprinkler system in your building. And it doesn't matter if it's your house, one house, a duplex, a townhouse with multiple units in one building, or an apartment building. that's lower than 7 stories, a office building, any kind of building, shopping center, hotel, whatever the situation is, warehouse. If it's a shopping center, in the old days, shopping centers and condominiums were not required to put fire sprinklers in the living or like the retail spaces. They're only required to put sprinklers in the trash chute room and the parking deck, parking garage. Okay, that's it. That's in the old days. That's why when you go around and you look at old condos or older buildings, you don't see fire sprinklers inside the building. It's basically outside or it's in a trash room, a trash chute room. Okay, so here's the fire code requirements. What components are required? You need water, right? You need piping. You need your sprinkler heads, control valves. Now, these two things are not connected to your water system, but they help. They're connected to your fire sprinkler system, alarm system, your alarm monitoring system, and the water discharge. The water discharge system is basically your sprinkler head. It could also be fire hoses or standpipe. Okay, so here, these are the components. Save lives, safety first. Well, here you can see what looks like an office building with this fire sprinkler head going off. Boy, that was fast. Thought I talked too much, but so the conclusion that I have is yes, the cost is an issue, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So if anybody asks me, if I was living in a condo building and we didn't have fire sprinklers, I would approve, I would be for installing fire sprinklers just because of the safety aspect. Okay. And not knowing about the cost. To me, the cost is secondary. Okay, because believe it or not, it's gonna come to that point where you're gonna get, it's not if, but when. When are there gonna be more fires? When are people gonna get killed from a fire? It happens. And believe me, I don't have much fun. I get depressed when I have to drive to the property knowing that people died there from a fire. The last time this happened was when there was a fire at this 2-story apartment building in Waikiki. And I don't have a very good feeling. And when I'm there on site, I'm talking to the fire investigator. And this person, his main job is to try and figure out what the cause of the fire is. But he already knows that 1 or 2 people had died in the fire, died because of the fire. And I can't even count how many times I went to either a building or a house that burnt down and somebody died there. It's depressing, but you have to go on because we need to know what the cause of the fire was so we can do a better job in education. For instance, in Liliha, I went to a house that burnt down and a lady died. Okay. I found out that there were burning candles and one of the candles got kicked over. They didn't want to use electricity because it was too expensive, so they used candles like in the old days. Okay. Another area, the person was smoking in bed and I guess they fell asleep and their cigarette was burning their blanket or something and the whole house caught on fire, right? There's another one, there was an electrical fire. Uh, yeah, so I'm just letting you know that I'm not a firefighter, but I go there. The other reason I go there is I'm a member of the National Fire Protection Association, and I'm trying to gather more information that I can share. So if we know that the fire was caused by electrical short, okay, then that's the message. Hey, check your electrical. Why is there like two power strips, one power strip plugged into another power strip, and you got all these numerous extension cords, that look like spaghetti. That's why it started. It got overheated and there was a short or something, right? Or please do not smoke in bed, or don't use candles, okay? Use electricity. Candles are very dangerous. We're not in the old days anymore where we didn't have electricity and people were burning kerosene lanterns, man. If the lantern falls over, that's like an instant fire. And Martin and I know we're old enough to realize that when we went camping, we used the old kerosene lanterns. Now, when I go camping, I use those battery ones with the lithium light bulb. And I carry spare batteries. I don't fool around with some live flame. It's like too dangerous. Okay, what you missed, we've given previous webinars. I mean, almost every single building component we talked about, from roofing, foundation, concrete spalling repair, painting, waterproofing, electrical, plumbing, cast iron drain piping, hurricane ties, you name it. I don't think there's one subject that we didn't really cover. We also cover like building codes, construction defects, developer transition, building envelope. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you find out a topic that we didn't cover, let us know. And then if we're interested or agree with you that it's a good topic, or we get more than one person recommending, then we'll consider that for the future. And what's coming up? We got a whole bunch of other topics coming up. I don't really have the list with me right now. But you can go to our website and take a look. And then you may ask, well, what is this website you keep talking about? And here it is. It's askbuildingexpert.now.site. Do you realize that almost every day we're updating this website? It's just jam-packed with information. First of all, we have a list of all the webinars we've given, and then we have the webinars on demand. You just decide which one you want to watch, click it, and it starts playing. We have handouts, we have PowerPoints that you can get. It's all for free. There's no charge, right? We have expert websites. What that means is we have websites for each type of building component. Spalling repair, painting, waterproofing, electrical, plumbing, the cast iron drain pipe. We have a whole bunch, and these are separate websites that we made to provide you information. And you might say, well, that's good, but have you written any books? Oh, yeah. We've got about 10 books that you can get. It's on Amazon.com, $14.95, pay shipping. But, we're in a giving mood. So you go to our website, you can download any of these books for free. And you know what? People tell me later, like, hey, I bought your book from Amazon. I didn't know we could get it free. I said, oh, you weren't paying attention. Have you been attending our webinars? And they go, no, I've been too busy. Well, that's how come you didn't know. But we try and give more than take, okay? I even wrote a book on monster houses. We spent $1,000 in research, going to DPP, making copies of all the building code violations that were issued to these monster house developers, and I put it in the book. So we pay money to get information out to give to you for free. The other thing is, I wrote a book about the Lahaina fire that should be a bestseller, but it's not yet. But anyway, I didn't do it for that reason. I did it to have the information out there for people to understand, what happened, what's going on. Okay. Speaking of books, I got a book coming out in next month with the guy that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, Jack Canfield. I wrote a book with him. It's coming out in August called Mindset Matters or something like that. So stay tuned. I'm not sure if I'm going to give it out free or not. Martin, what do you think? Should we give it out free? You know what? Don't answer. Every time I ask you the same question, you always say, yeah, give it out free. So anyway, you got questions, I got answers. Here's my number and my email on the screen. And if you're not watching or paying attention, it's 808-422-2132. And then email lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. I answer all my telephone calls and emails. I might not answer it when you call. You might have to leave a message, but I'll get back to you. And then if I don't, for some reason, and let's say a week goes by and never responded, you can call again and say, hey, you know what? At your webinar, you said you're going to get back to us. I never heard back from you. Can you call me back or something? But when you call or email, can you leave information pertaining to what your question is and just not say, oh, call me, because then I get those messages, and the ones that I call first are the ones that I know what I'm calling about. The call me ones, I'm like, are you calling me to take me to lunch, or do you have an important question? Okay. And every question is important. Sometimes people call, oh, my question isn't that important, but I just kind of want to know the answer. I said, no, every question is important. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Martin to see if he has any questions or comments. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a question. If you have a comment about what the discussion was, I'm open to that also. So, Martin, we have any questions or comments? I'd like to address that. Those.
Yeah, we have some that have come in earlier, and I encourage our Zoom participants to ask your questions direct. Get the answers that you've been looking for, especially since you spent the time to join us on the Zooms, and I'll try to connect those that we've gotten on the social media. So feel free. So yeah, we've had a few earlier questions, and the first one I have here is my condo board was advised, I'm sorry, by our property manager that even if the city does not require the fire sprinklers to be installed right away, our insurance company may require them. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, before I expand on that, I want to give a shout out to some of the people that logged into our Zoom platform. Gail, who's been a very avid supporter, she emails at the end of every webinar, I think. It's almost like a teacher when you turn in your homework assignment. But thank you, because your comments are very well received, and I appreciate that. Out of 100 or 200 people that attend the webinar, we don't hear back from them, so we don't know. But thank you, Gail. And we got Paula, who's been a longtime Facebook friend of mine. I don't think she ever sleeps because I see Facebook. She's on early in the morning and stuff. So thank you, Paula, out at the west side. And then Sharon, my mortgage person. I don't mention the last names, but if you want me to, I could. But hey, let's get back to the question. Now, the city council had kicked the can down the road and keep giving people more time to have the fire sprinklers installed because of the money issue. There was a lot of flack from the property management sector and the condo associations. When I went to city council to testify for or against fire sprinklers, of course, I testified for. I'm sitting next to a board president who's my client of this association. And he said, "Hey, what are you here for?" I said, "I'm here to testify for the fire sprinklers. What about you?" And he told me, "I'm here to testify against fire sprinklers." I go, "Okay, well, that's fine. Can we still be friends?" He goes, and he laughed. He said, "We hired you as a construction manager to manage all of our construction projects, but this is one where we can't afford it. So I'm not in favor of it." I said, "Okay, good. We can agree to disagree. That's fine." Um, and so even if the city, Honolulu City Council does not require fire sprinklers, let's say they changed their mind and said, we decided that we're not going to require it anymore. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's good. Celebrate, because now we don't have to spend millions of dollars doing fire sprinklers in our buildings. Okay. The insurance company comes in and says, we don't follow the city law. We have nothing to do with the city. We're our own insurance company. We're telling you that if there's a fire in your building, a major fire, and somebody gets injured or killed, we're going to require fire sprinklers for a building. I don't care what the city says. Okay. And then you're stuck, right? So that's been the consensus. Now, if you ask these insurance companies point blank, they're going to say, nah, and we didn't say for sure, maybe not, but we get sources that are very, very reliable. And I'm in every day. I'm in the trenches networking with contractors, insurance companies, DPP, you name it. So out of anybody, I think I should have the most qualified, reliable answers. And I don't work for the news agencies that sometimes twist facts or sensationalize things, just to get their story out, right? So people know me by now. When I give responses, they can pretty much rely on that, take it to the bank. Okay. So insurance companies might decide to go that route and then you're stuck. Okay. The other thing is, as you know, insurance companies are increasing their rates. Okay. And if you don't know, if you live in a condo building, there's new requirements now. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is requiring, which is government that are backing up mortgages, right? So conventional financing, if your building does not have 100% hurricane coverage, they're not going to finance. So you have a buyer, you're selling a condo. A buyer wants to buy a condo. He goes to the bank, he tries to get conventional financing. The question is, does that building have 100% hurricane coverage? No. Okay, well, sorry, we can't do your loan. Right? Just like that. The other thing is that in condo buildings, now the federal government's asking questions. How much is your reserves? Do you have any outstanding building issues like concrete spalling repair, or your elevators are old, or how about your cast iron piping? Hey, once they know all this and the answers, yes, we have those problems or we haven't fixed it yet, they're not going to want to finance. So it's going to get harder and harder to get conventional financing. Sorry, but that's just how it is. Okay, so back to the answer. The answer to the question is yes, insurance companies are getting strict and they don't necessarily follow what the law is, the mandate. They have their own laws, and their insurance companies are not about insuring your property and taking a loss, right? These companies are in it to make money. They have to be profitable. So how are they going to be profitable? There's too many payouts, okay? And I heard it. all these wildfires everywhere are infecting the insurance rates for everybody, right? A wildfire in California affecting our rates in Hawaii. We have our own problem, the Lahaina wildfire. All the insurance companies, plenty of them bailed out already because they're like, we can't afford this thing. We're not insuring anymore, or their premiums are jacked up. So sorry, it's just bad, terrible right now. So hopefully that was the answer to the question. I kind of like deviated, but I think it's for the better. So what else we got?
Well, I just had a question, kind of a follow-up to this, as a kind of preventive measure. Are the commercial buildings required to do, or condos required to have periodic fire protection inspections, of some sort to make sure that their properties have some kind of a protection, process? I was thinking about when they teach the kids in school every year, there's this annual, know your escape plans and all that kind of stuff for if you have a fire. But is there such a process for the commercial buildings to make sure? I know
Yeah,
that we did commercial fire drills once in a while when I was working.
yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that up. Let me stop this screen share. Okay, so by law, buildings, no matter if it's residential or commercial, they have fire alarm system. It needs to be inspected. That's a requirement. So although these buildings are negligent in having their building inspected for spalling, maybe, or roofing or that kind of thing, when it comes to life safety, they're required to have inspections of their fire alarm system, fire sprinkler system, wet and dry standpipes, which are vertical pipes that either has water in it or the dry standpipe doesn't have water in it, but then the fire department would come, connect their hose to the fire hydrant and to the dry standpipe of the building, turn the valve on. Now the whole building has water, which would they use to put the fire out. Okay, so in answer to your question, yes, it's actually a code requirement for inspection. So I mean, that's a good thing, right? So now we got to get to the point of requiring general building inspections, periodic inspections, and making sure that all the buildings, no matter what type, residential or commercial, are having their inspections done. And I want to bring up, remember years ago they had that Florida building collapse? That major collapse that killed like 100 people. There was a mandate in that town, Surfside, Florida. There's a mandate building inspection, okay, of structural components, structural and electrical. Okay, guess when they needed to do it. They needed to do it. Well, there was an inspection to sign off when the building was built. Okay, that's the first inspection. Now, the second inspection is called a re-inspection certification of the structural components, looking for spalling repairs, cracked beams, columns, those kind of things, and electrical. Guess when the next required inspection was? Was it 10 years later, 20 years later? It was 40 years later, 40. So after that collapse, I actually called the building department in that jurisdiction, and I said, I just want to clarify this. I don't understand. You're saying that the building doesn't have to be inspected until 40 years after? And he said, yeah, that's what the code is. And I said, but it doesn't make sense because concrete spalling would occur 15 to 20 years after the building was built new, right? So now you have a building sitting there, years 21 through 40, without no inspections done that's mandated. And they go, oh, it's a condo building. The condo is its own government, so they should have their own requirements. And I said, okay, thank you. Then I realized that you live in a condo. Do condos have their own requirement to have building inspections? I don't think so. They should. I've inspected thousands and thousands of condos. I reviewed reserve studies and all that, and their condo governing documents, and I don't see anything that says that they have to do inspections every year or every 5 years. There's nothing. The only thing come close to that, right? That comes close to that is you're required to do a reserve study, right? But the reserve study person is not an engineer or a building inspector like what I do, right? So they're not looking for details of spalling, they can see in general. So I wouldn't count a reserve study as for replacement of a full building inspection for structural and electrical and these kind of things. So anyway, today's not Sunday, so I should not be giving these sermons, but what other questions do we have?
Yeah, well, thanks for the answer and the clarification on that one for me. Yeah, the next question that's come in is can you tell me what the cost of fire sprinklers would be for a new house, say in Lahaina?
Are you building one?
Not me, not me. I'm sure that plenty of people are.
Oh, it's going to be sad because when it comes time to rebuild in Lahaina, there's a shortage of contractors, there's a shortage of building materials. Your normal per square foot used to be like $450, $500 a square foot. Now it's like more than that, right? So, but for fire sprinklers for single family house, you're talking probably $10, $8-10 a square foot. So if you have a house that's say 2,000 square feet, fire sprinklers would be about 18-20,000. Okay, now that's just a rough idea. That's not in Lahaina though. In Lahaina, it's probably going to be more because it's strange. In Honolulu, on an island of Oahu, there's one price, and then the price is multiplied by a percentage when you have to deal with construction costs on neighbor islands. So therefore, you take Honolulu costs and then Maui, Kauai, the Big Island, the cost is actually more historically, right? Just like on the mainland. That's why when we do estimating, we have these code books that we use as backup, right? And there's what's called a multiplier. So you take building a house in Nebraska, okay? To use the same figures to build a same house in Honolulu, Hawaii, or Hawaii in general, or Alaska, you have to use a multiplier. You have to multiply that figure by 0.6 or 8 or whatever the situation is. So it's more expensive. But regarding fire sprinklers in houses, I would recommend that. Okay, I would recommend that. If we have time, I'll talk about wildfire and fire sprinklers, but that's only if we have time. So what else we got?
Yeah, here's our next question about high-rise condos. Do you know how many high-rise buildings there are in Honolulu that do not have fire sprinklers?
Yes, it's 300 plus. So you got 300, let's say little over 300 buildings that are high rise, which means they're 75 feet and higher that do not have fire sprinklers. And that's a pretty big number, but you have to remember that these buildings built in the 60s and 70s the fire sprinkler code came into effect in 1975, around there. So the buildings that were built prior to that, there was no code requirement. So you have some buildings that are built in 1979, maybe early 80s, that they don't have fire sprinklers because the code didn't require them at the time. Now, there's a lag because although the 1975 requirement came out, when you submit your plans in 1975, right, or a little earlier, you're using the code years before that. So your building may start construction in 1977, but there was no requirement for fire sprinklers because when you submitted your plans, it was submitted before the requirement came into effect. So there's some leeway there in terms of, time period. So what else?
Good answer on that one. So we still got a lot of places that could use some sprinkler protection. Yes. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The last one is more of I guess a general review question is what are the main components that go into a fire sprinkler system?
Okay. Maybe that person tuned in a little later, but I mentioned it in the presentation. I don't want to say, hey, show up on time so you don't miss anything, like my high school professor used to say. You got water supply, you have your pipes, you got sprinkler heads, control valve connected to your fire alarm system. And here's a big one. For buildings that don't have fire sprinklers, you need to install a separate water meter, a backflow preventer, and you need separate space for your fire pumps and all that. How much space do you need? If your building is like really crap, you don't have that much space, you're talking, you might need maybe half of a size of a parking stall. So hopefully your building has something like that. You just got to go look around. There might be some yard space or somewhere that you can use for that purpose. Now, wanted to talk about, I was thinking about this, the Lahaina fire. If all those houses had fire sprinklers, would they still have burnt down? After knowing what fire sprinklers can do, I was thinking about that, and you know what the answer I came up with? The answer was yes, the houses would have still burnt down because the fire sprinklers protect the inside of the house. They're not protecting the outside. And the wildfires, right? It was so windy that the fire started. Embers are blowing on a house roof and the roof started on fire. So if that house had fire sprinklers, the sprinklers wouldn't go off until the heat, right? So it would have been too late. The house would have been on fire before the sprinklers went off. Now, the situation is they have, and those are all interior fire sprinklers. Now they have this exterior fire sprinkler system for houses located in wildfire areas. And people say, well, what if I just turn my irrigation sprinkler on, for your yard and all that? I go, no, that's not going to work. So is your irrigation system watering your roof of your house and the sides of your house? If the answer is no, then it doesn't work. So this exterior fire sprinkler system for single family houses, imagine you have your irrigation system or your fire sprinkler system that's located outside of your house. So you have these heads that are shooting water on your roof and on the sides of your house and all that. Maybe that would have helped, right? But I haven't tested one of those. I like to see the test results on raging wind. They set the house on fire and let's see the sprinklers go off and how much protection that the house would have. Okay, so that to me is not proven yet, but we'll have to see. So we got any other comments or questions before we sign off and go on our merry way and then wait for the video replay?
No questions, just you have a Zoom comment there. That,
Yeah,
no
the one from
question?
Sharon.
Yep,
That
good
no
info.
no
Good info.
question, but thank you for the 75 feet question. So
And
yeah.
why is that the 75 feet? Is that I heard the ladders on the trucks can only get
Yeah,
so high and all
so the
that.
reason for 75 feet is because the hook and ladder, the fire department fire truck has a long ladder, and that's how far the ladder can reach. So they base that if the fire truck ladder can't get up higher than 75 feet, then the rest of the building in height over that 75-foot height requirement should have fire sprinklers, right? Because otherwise, how is the fire department going to get to you to put the fire out? So if a building is 5 stories and the ladder is 75 feet, the fire department can easily set their ladder up and go shoot the fire, but a 74-foot ladder is not going to reach a 20-story building. So that's the reasoning. One of the reasons why high-rise buildings should have fire sprinklers, because it's impossible for the fire department to get to the source of the fire. Now, the other thing is, I've reviewed other ways to put fires out, and from hooking up some kind of system to your plumbing. So instead of having a building-wide global fire sprinkler system, you have a unit fire sprinkler system when it's set up so that it's sprinkler heads that operate not with the separate fire line system, but the plumbing system in your own unit. So it's contained. That's one. Another one is these drones. I've seen a video of these drones in Japan or China, and somehow they get the call and all these drones fly to the high-rise building and start shooting water at the unit that's on fire. So I've seen that. I mean, there's all these different ways. There's even one where instead of water, they're shooting out this chemical that somehow the chemical mixed in together will put the fire out instead of using water. So they're saying you don't need water, you don't need a fire sprinkler system in your building. We install these in every unit or whatever. I don't know how good that works or not, but I'm always looking at these people contact me saying, "Oh, can you review this since you're like one of the building experts? Because if you approve it, you know, your word is going to be good." And I'm like, I haven't approved too many building materials. Oh, space age material. Yeah, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I go, okay, you want me to test it out? And I got pieces of rebar and stuff still in my yard. They go, can you approve it? I go, yeah, I need 2 years. I'm gonna put it out on my stone wall and see if it rusts or anything. Right? I got all kinds of stuff. So anyway, it's all good. I know we're nearing the end, and I appreciate everybody attending. Tune in to our future webinars. Sorry, I don't have the topics offhand. Marta, do you have the topics?
I do. Let me check real quick.
Oh, I know I'm giving one on Sagrada Familia, the church in Barcelona. I know I'm
Yeah,
doing
that's your let's see, your next one. That's your next one this month. You're doing that on the 23rd?
July 23rd. Okay, so I'll be
Yeah.
talking about that church. I have first-hand experience because I was just there 2 months ago, and I
Yep.
took a tour. Got a lot of information. I've always wanted to go there. In fact, I was supposed to go there before the pandemic. I had it set up, you know, the pandemic came and I couldn't travel for 2 years, so I had to cancel. And then finally, I just had the time to go this past year. So it's enlightening. I deviated from our normal building construction topics to talk about that because I think, would be good for people to know. I'm even writing a book about it. So although when I went to you know how it is, it's hilarious, right? You go take the tour and all that. Reminds me of Disneyland. You can't get out unless you go through the store, right? Souvenir shop. So I go through the souvenir shop and I had this idea, man, I'm so impressed with this. I'm gonna write a book, right? So I go to the store and there's like 5 books written on the subject. And I go on Amazon, there's like 20 books. And I'm like, why should I write a book? There's already books out there. And I go, the reason why is because I have a different perspective. My perspective is coming from a building expert and engineer. So I think I can share a little different take on things, right? So I don't know when that book's gonna come out because I'm working on some other ones. But anyway, are we ready to sign off?
I think we are.
Okay, so appreciate you guys attending. Thanks for tuning in. Without you guys, we'd just be talking to ourselves. So appreciate that. And if you're not watching live, you're watching a replay, we appreciate you watching the replay also because we want to get the word out. I think we have good messages to share. Go to our website, get some free stuff, books, watch the webinars and all that. So we invite you to attend our next webinar, which I'll be talking about my personal visit to Barcelona, Spain, Sagrada Familia. So until then, see you guys. Thank you. Aloha. Mahalo.